All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about two silent but really dangerous poisons, mercury and lead. They can be found in some surprisingly common places, and we're going to break down exactly how they attack our bodies and, maybe more importantly, how we can fight back.
Okay, so here's the plan. First, we're going to meet the whole toxic family these poisons belong to. Then, we'll get up close and personal with our two main culprits, Mercury, the Mad Hatter, and lead, the silent stalker. And then, we'll wrap up by revealing the pretty ingenious therapy used to take them down. All right, let's dive right in. First up, let's get a handle on the bigger picture, the category these toxins actually belong to. See, they're not just any old poison. They're part of a specific group called irritants. So what does that actually mean, irritants? Well, in simple terms, these things cause a really painful, damaging inflammation of our sensitive inner linings. We're talking about your throat, your stomach, your intestines. They literally attack the body from the inside out. And this family has some pretty notorious members, right? You've got arsenic, copper, but for this explainer, we're really going to zoom in on two of the most historically significant and, frankly, dangerous ones, mercury and lead. Okay, let's kick things off with our first villain, mercury. You might remember it as that cool, shimmering liquid metal from old thermometers, but trust me, it has a really dark history when it comes to toxicology. Mercury is a sneaky one. It rarely shows up as a poison in its pure liquid form. Instead, it hides out in all these different chemical compounds. You'll find it in super toxic industrial chemicals like mercuric chloride, but also, and this is wild, in traditional cosmetics like Sindor, which has mercuric sulfide. So how does this stuff actually do its damage? Well, it's all happening on a microscopic level. Mercury's whole plan is to seek out and bind to these things called sulfahydryl groups. Now, these are absolutely essential parts of our enzymes. Think of them as the tiny protein machines that run our cells. When mercury grabs on, it just shuts those machines down completely. So if someone gets hit with a big dose, mercury unleashes this absolutely devastating 1-2 punch. The first phase is this immediate, violent reaction in your gut. We're talking burning pain, vomiting. It's brutal. Now, if a person manages to survive that initial assault, a second, delayed phase kicks in, and this one attacks the mouth, the teeth, and most critically, the kidneys, often leading to total failure. But here's where it gets really fascinating. What happens with long-term, low-level exposure? Well, it leads to this collection of symptoms that has an unforgettable name, Mad Hatter syndrome. And yeah, it's named exactly for who you think it is, 19th century hat makers. They were constantly exposed to mercury vapors used to make felt hats. The symptoms are just all over the place, from physical things like the hatter's shake to severe psychological effects like irritability and memory loss, which they called erythism. Okay, let's pivot to our second villain, lead. And this one's a whole different beast. Unlike mercury's often rapid, brutal attack, lead plays the long game. It's what we call a cumulative poison. So what does cumulative actually mean here? It's pretty scary, actually. About 90% of the lead that gets into your body doesn't just get flushed out. Nope. It gets stored in your bones and your teeth. And it can just sit there, building up for decades, slowly leaching out and causing damage over a lifetime. It's a real silent stalker. Lead's main game plan is sabotage. It goes straight for the body's assembly line for red blood cells. By blocking these three key enzymes you see here, lead basically throws a wrench in the works, crippling our ability to make healthy red blood cells that carry oxygen. And that leads directly to a very specific and very dangerous type of anemia. And the crazy amount of damage from chronic lead poisoning, it's a lot to remember, but it can be summed up with this really handy mnemonic. A, B, C, D, E, F. This covers a terrifying range of symptoms, from anemia and that Bertonian line on the gums, to severe abdominal colic, nerve damage causing what's called wrist drop, and even severe brain damage or encephalopathy. Let's zoom in on one of those signs for a second, the Bertonian line. This is one of the most classic telltale clues of chronic lead poisoning. This distinct blue-black line right along the gums is caused by a chemical reaction with lead that's been deposited in the tissue. It's a sign that doctors have been looking for centuries. Okay, so we've met these two pretty formidable villains. The big question is, how do we fight back? Well, the answer isn't some simple pill. The hero of this story is a process called chelation therapy.
The whole idea behind chelation is actually simple, but it's totally ingenious. Chelating agents are these special compounds that basically act like molecular magnets. They're designed to be more attracted to heavy metals like lead and mercury than our own body is. So they literally grab on to the toxic metal ions and just refuse to let go. So what this process does is it takes a dangerous, free-roaming metal ion and turns it into a stable, harmless package that's ready for disposal. It's like a three-step cleanup. First, the agent binds to the metal. Second, it forms a brand new non-toxic complex called a chelate. And finally, and this is the key part, because this new complex is water-soluble, the body can just flush it right out through the kidneys. Job done. And this isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. There's a whole arsenal, a whole toolkit of specific chelating agents for different metals. For instance, agents like BAL and EDTA are super effective against our two villains, lead and mercury, which makes them absolutely critical tools for toxicologists. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive, but it leaves you with a really important question to think about. Now that you know how these poisons work, where might they be hiding in plain sight around you? We're talking about old paint, old pipes, maybe even certain products. These invisible threats can be a lot closer than we think. And remember, awareness is always the first and most important step in staying safe. Thanks for tuning in.